next award represents a historic moment in the telecommunication industry. And we believe, frankly, that it is a model for the new decade ahead. It also represents a historic achievement of people actually working together.
This is Ken Pyle at the 2013 Broadband Communities Summit exhibit floor, and we're here without the rest of the exhibitors right now, so we're probably not supposed to be here. But I'm with Hilda Legg, former RUS administrator and vice chair of this conference, great conference. You introduced Milo Medin today from Google, which very interesting conversation he had. And, you know, you've been involved with clients, I guess, recently on the stimulus type stuff. So why don't you give us kind of an update on what you've seen with regards to the stimulus and where things are?
Well, first, thanks for the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is deployment of high-speed broadband. I particularly, as you well know, am interested in it going into rural areas, which is the client base that I work with primarily. And of course, having been at the Rural Utility Service, obviously, that's where we focus in our rural areas. But first, let me make a comment about the summit itself, because I've heard it a number of times today, what a really good program it is. And I thought to myself, it's about 10 years I've been coming, and it does really grow, and it gets tighter, you know, it gets more refined, it flows smoothly. I just think it's a really good conference for folks who are interested in broadband and advanced communication systems to attend. I have never been to a conference that has more meat in terms of real information, because we have, 3 or 4 tracks running, you know, every hour of the day. The luncheon was great with Medin from Google. He did a fabulous job. I think the other thing that I was most excited about was the announcement of the award winners for Cornerstone, which were the 2 mayors of Kansas City and the Google project. And the thing that I would like to say there is, having been in economic development and working with political entities all of my life, the hardest thing we often are challenged by, the challenge that is the greatest sometimes, is getting people to work together. And the thing that really pleased me is that those 2 mayors were willing to put aside their geographic boundaries, their voting constituent boundaries, and to say, if we collaborate, this entire area will benefit. And so it is the old theme of rising tide raises all boats. And I just want to take a minute to talk about that, because I found that to be very rewarding. Technology has always been the thing that leveled the playing fields. Having focused a lot in Appalachia with my economic development work, I talk about it levels the mountains, because the mountains have always been great barriers to telecommunications connectivity. In the wide open spaces of the West, it would be the distance. But I think that what telecommunications has done, and the growth and the bandwidth and the expansion, just keeps on it growing, and demand is going to grow, and the usage is going to just continue to bring the creativity out of our generations to come. And so I'm excited. You would think after you've done this for so many years you wouldn't be excited, but every year I come and I get renewed and I get reinvigorated. And so I just wanted to sort of plug the fact that if this is your first year, come back, because it just really does get better, I think, every year. One of the reasons, because you're here and you go around and talk to a lot of excited
people. Well, thank you. Well, you know what, though? I think that's part of it is the sessions are great, but it's also just this kind of one-on-one running into people and learning from each other.
Networking, exactly. My little business, my consulting business, Legg Strategies, focuses on primarily rural infrastructure. I do some water and wastewater projects, but mainly my work has been with the independents and the rural telephone co-ops. And most of them right now are recipients of either BIP or BTOP, either NTIA or RUS stimulus funding. So if you want to talk about the status of that, I think by and large, many projects are beginning to wind down. And I think they are actually coming to the end of their build out. They've been very aggressive. Obviously, this administration and government was pushing them to be aggressive in it. So I think we're seeing that. And the amazing thing is that when I was at RUS over now a decade ago, we would never have thought about doing fiber to the home projects. And now these really rural areas are getting fiber to the home. Have there been challenges? Yes, but the grant money that was able to package with the loan money at RUS particularly has enabled these really remote small telcos to bring this capacity to the individual home. And I think the results of that funding are yet to be seen in healthcare, in education, and economic development. Do we need more of that? Absolutely. I think we do have to continue to build out. But I think we're getting ready to see some of the results of it. I think the infrastructure build out is beginning to wind down. I think a lot of the vendors here have made the bigger sales, if you will, with those projects. There's a couple of issues that are out there. Some of the Davis-Bacon wage requirements have changed since the beginning of the project. So when they designed the project and bid the project, it was based on one set of wages, and then that has been redefined. That's a glitch out there that's some. And when you are operating on a small return, ROI, return on your investment, that can really eat up that investment. So that's a little bit of a problem. In some cases, we just had I think some entities that bit off more than they knew how to chew real quickly, so it took a little more time. But I think by and large, the stimulus money you're going to be seeing the results of that, and I think a growth and a positive impact in the next few months in the rest of 2013.
One of the things that struck me, I don't know, as one of the conversations or one of the speeches, was just the idea of the stimulus that Google's provided in the contest they did, and it makes me kind of think, well, are there other contests like that would be possible?
Well, I think, the best compliment is to be copied. Mm-hmm. So I would think that if Google is copied, it is a compliment. I think people will look at that. One of the questions that our speaker at lunch today was asked had to do with, what's your profit and what's your cost. And of course, Google wasn't really willing to open up to that. And that's fine. We understand that's a private investment prerogative. But I think there will be that question, can they make money? Now, whether they drive that demand, of course they have driven it, and of course they've driven the demand for more and more bandwidth. And if others will pick up on that, I'm not sure whether they will, but I would think there's a good chance because it appears to have been very successful.
Yeah, and based on an earlier presentation I saw from him, I think financially it's a good proposition for him. But it is an interesting comment that he made, but it was also reflected something that Blair Levin said the other day, and that is really you can't rely on the feds. You have to really pick it up at the local level. And I think Medine said the cities have to grab their own broadband destiny, to that effect.
And I think that's a really strong lesson. We at the agency, and over a decade ago, never made loans to municipalities. We were lending primarily to, again, independents and cooperatives. In the 2001 Farm Bill, where we got our first broadband money, we had three different client bases. We lent to wireless, and we lent to startups, and we made loans to municipalities. And since that time, there have been those brave early adopters, if you will, that went out and as a muni, where they were not able to get the services that they wanted from the larger providers, they formed their own, and some failed, and they hired their brother-in-law who knew more about tech. I mean, think about it. This was still the days when everybody wasn't doing iPhones, and it wasn't just everywhere, and so there were struggles and there were some failures. But it began to drive the idea that, yes, if you can't get what you want from a fairly, it won't be a monopoly, but a limited number of large providers, then yes, you can do it yourselves. It just took a lot of initiative, a lot of trial error. I think that what they're doing is, really kind of paving the way for even more of those municipal developments. We have for a number of years, as small towns and cities sometimes we've owned our electric power. We have owned our water and wastewater treatment facilities. We have we always certainly bring the franchises in on cable. I don't think as many people own that, but there's always that relationship. But owning your telecom was not something that people were really accustomed to. For number one, it's a very volatile industry. It changes. It is constantly changing, and even more so, I guess, in the last decade than in previous times. So in staying on top of it, being equipped, and typically government doesn't do as well in that private space because it's government. Yes. You have to be very reactive, responsive, and call centers, and and crews that know how to go out and deal with fiber. And I know I've always encouraged the one trench. You lay your water line, your electric line, and your fiber line. And it's always, those water people will cut the fiber. It's that. So I think we're beginning to overcome some of that. That's why I was so excited these two mayors collaborating together. And I think you're going to see more of that. If you can't get what you want from the provider, then your traditional provider, then what is it that you want your cities to have? And it is woven so intricately with workforce development and workforce training and economic development and recruiting the kinds of industries you want, and clean industries and green industries and all those things, and telecommuting. It's so much a part of your whole economic development plan that if you don't look at it, you're really missing the boat. You have to have it.
Yeah, and I think what Google showed, along with the mayors of Kansas City, Kansas Cities, is that you don't necessarily have to build it and buy it yourself, but you can help kind of facilitate things by kind of making the regulatory process easier, right, and other things.
Permits, and again, this you all had we had an excellent session on assets. Munis own a lot of assets, especially in the wireless, sector of buildings and spaces, and so how to map those assets. And I know some of the presenters are actually selling that as a service, or have that as a service, a consulting service, to go and help you map that and see what it is that you could use to help promote your city to one of the vendors. And so that's a different change. That's a switch. It's really a paradigm switch, frankly. So I think all of those are exciting things that are happening. And yes, it's unproven and uneven and unsure and maybe a little risky, but I think it's if you don't take the risk, you don't have the chance of the payoff. So there are good and exciting things happening in this sector and in this industry, and so I hope people will enjoy the summit and come back next year and tell all their friends about it.
Well, and that's what makes it exciting and want to come back, because it is
exactly
constantly
right.
changing. Hilda, thank you very much.
Thank you. You're a joy to work with.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thanks.